Deliver Gene, opening prayer. I won't call you anyhow. Whoops, I better get ready. Huh? Okay. See the hand? That's. Good evening. Tonight we're in lesson 4 of our 7-lesson biblical marriage thing, at which time I thought by this time we'd be done, but we're not. So we'll just continue to move along and see what we can learn and what we can add to our understanding of God's plans for things. I was sitting at home tonight and I was just sitting down and talking to my wife because I know she wanted me to talk to her so she could be encouraged, so I try to do that all the time. And I was sitting there and the dog comes over and she wants her belly scratched. And we have a Rottweiler, she's about that big. And she lays her head in her lap and she gets all sorts of attention. And I remember some of the old guys used to say, I've just got a dog's life at home. Dogs have a pretty good life sometimes, that's they get taken care of, they get their belly scratched. Do you ever get your belly scratched, Bob? I don't get my belly scratched, no. Don't get my chin scratched or my ears, so Okay. I better get started here. Just light introduction. We talked about this briefly at the end of the study last week. We've discussed how God intended for male and female relationships. I think, again, I'm going to say that's important. And of course, you know how I feel about some of the things that go on, and it's not a relationship between a man or a woman and a woman, but that's nothing new to our generation. That has been in the world for a long, long time, but we need to really grab a hold of that and understand that anything other than a male and female in a marriage relationship is a sin. And we need to keep that in our minds. We also look at the idea that we have noticed that the effects that the first sin had on marriage relationships. And it did right away, didn't it? I mean, they sinned. It wasn't any big deal. It wasn't really a big deal if you think about it, right? They just had one thing they didn't have to do. And that's eat whatever kind of a fruit was on that tree. And they ate it, and it changed their whole lives. And it changed them for the rest of their lives. And it changed all of our lives, really. And so it's good for us to think about that once in a while. Last week, we discussed the impact of sin on the marriage relationship. And sin does have an impact on relationship. And it's not just by sexual immorality. Sometimes it's by our words, or how we treat one another physically, how we take care of one another, and how we think about one another. So there's a lot more to sin in marriage relationships than just immorality or sexual immorality. Tonight, we're going to look at the wife's role, and we're going to take a look from Proverbs 31. Now, ladies, I hesitate to always teach this chapter because I feel the women might be more in gear with it than I am, but there's some important things here. So I'm not trying to in any way say that you don't understand what the role of the ideal wife is. But these are the things that God says the wife that God has created for us has these qualities. Now, men, what we're going to find out, there's not a list like this for the men. There really is. We don't generally look at them that way when we'll look at those. But I have a little tendency, and I'm going to ask you sisters to maybe don't be afraid to speak up or help us understand. Dale, come on in. It's good to see you. Haven't seen Dale in a while. He's looking pretty good. Go to Proverbs 18 and verse 22. I don't have that on there. Okay. Proverbs 18:22. And fellas, I want you to explain this to me. I'll read it so you can think about it. But I think it doesn't hurt for us to look at the importance of this passage. I know it's a proverb, okay? I understand what a proverb is. But I believe it speaks the truth of how God wants us to understand things. It says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. Now, I'm leaving it open to you guys to kind of interpret that for us or kind of let us know what that means. I'll just ask this question. Generally, when we look for a wife, guys, you have certain physical things that you look for, physical attraction. This says, a man that finds a wife finds a good thing. And it goes on to say, and obtains favor from the Lord. So what's the writer talking about here, ladies? If the guys can't answer, Gene? Telephone calls?
To me, that says she's not looking at me as to how I look, how much money I make. She's attracted to me because she loves me for who I am, not what I am. Hopefully not what I would be.
Well, that might be her saying, I find a good husband. You know,
Yeah, but
it's got to be a little more than just looks and stuff. What does it mean to you to find a good wife?
yeah, but she didn't have to accept me.
We're not talking about whether she does or not.
Yeah, but that's good for him. It's good for me.
Yeah, well, it might not be good for her. You're right.
Okay.
There's another one. Janie protect you. Go ahead.
So, as we've been looking at different women in our studies on Tuesdays, and, you know, like the roles these women play and what we're supposed to glean from them and stuff, one of the big things that comes out of that is like, we as women are going to be influences on our husband. And we can be good and we can be bad. We see many examples of both of those in the Bible. So, I know it doesn't say the man who finds a good wife finds a treasure. It just says wife. That's kind of what I think of when I look.
Well, mine says good, so,
yeah,
okay.
I think of that. I think of if a man finds a good woman who's going to be a good influence, he's going to always stay in the favor of the Lord because she's going to be influencing him in that direction. She can easily not. So that's kind of what I think.
And so then, Mindy, what are you saying? Are you saying that a man should look for a woman that's with the Lord?
Yeah.
And is focused on the Lord more than on him? Because how else could she help him, right? Through life and stuff, so. Anybody else?
I was thinking more along the line that it's saying that man needs a helper. God always, from the beginning, said man needs to have a helper. So this is just that's that pairing up that God says, if a man finds a wife, then he's found that helper, and he finds favor in the Lord because that's what God had planned for him.
Okay. Anybody else? Come on, guys. Okay, Rick?
I don't think this verse is telling us at all what to look for in a wife.
Okay.
Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
Oh, yeah. and-
We all have different opinions of what might be a wife. But marriage was ordained by God.
I didn't hear you, please.
Marriage is sanctified by God.
Yes.
He blessed us, right? We have a wife. You can't have children unless you're married. And the Lord wants us to raise our children in the right way.
Okay.
I think that's what this is telling about.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would concur with that. This verse in particular, 18:22, is that the establishment of marriage itself is inherently good.
Did it what?
The establishment of marriage, the institution of marriage itself is inherently good.
Oh, yes, yes. You trimmed your, I didn't recognize you sitting back there for a minute. It's Isaac, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the light, okay. Bob? Oh,
I didn't really have anything.
okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we just put that in here to move on. You know, so for a man there is something special about a woman in a man's life. I'm the type of guy, I don't do well living alone. Just be honest with you. This is my, I remarried and stuff like that. I just don't do well living alone. Some guys have the blessing that, I'm just going to use the word celibacy, means they just have that blessing, and believe it or not, there are men like that, and women like that. They can go on, the Lord may have them doing other things. But most of us have a need to have a companion, correct? And so what we want to do is think about this command, or the, I guess we could say the rules that God has set forth and so forth. So let's go on down and turn over to Proverbs 31 now. And it says, I think it's, when I was looking at this over and over again, I was thinking about, man, we sometimes, it's easy just to read through these and so forth, but it's also important, men, for us to understand the value of a godly woman in our life and how important she is in our life. So when I talk about, our teaching maybe our young fellows how to look for a woman that he'd like to spend his life with and so forth, it says it's not just outward appearance, it's something other than that. I think Peter says what? Don't let your hair with gold and stuff weaved in, your outward appearance be what's seen, but let the inward of your heart, let the inward woman be seen, right? You need to, so this godly woman, you can tell who she is. And so I think this is some amazing things down through here. I don't have much to say, so we might get out of here by 6:30, but or 7:30. So let's look at verse 10. And okay, let's just look at that. An excellent wife, who can find? For her worth is far above jewels. Now, it says an excellent wife, and that comes from that Hebrew word that's up there. That can be translated excellent or noble character or virtuous or good, and it relates to strength of character. So this would include a process of both thought and action, right? When you look at this description here of this lady, the idea of thinking good thoughts and living life in a good way. Is that kind of what this woman does? I mean, she's an excellent woman. She's noble character or strength of character. So back to Mindy, how did you all describe that, Mindy, in your class?
What's that?
The proverb. You haven't gotten there yet?
No, I'm reading too. I'm looking.
Okay. So
Sorry.
if this is what this excellent wife looks like, right? It's demonstrated in her character, isn't it? And in the way she thinks and the way she speaks. It's not just outward beauty, okay? It's not just how she makes you feel, but it's actually who she is. And that's as far as I can make out of it. Now, you ladies may have something else to say about it, and do you? If this woman has good character, or if this woman is, let's say, virtuous and good, what would the opposite of that be?
Nasty.
I just said evil. So who will turn to 1 Thessalonians 5:22, please? Raise your hand real quick. Janie, okay. So when I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, ladies, and I just pulled both fellows in with this also. If this description that God gives us of this lady, she's virtuous or she's good, and the opposite is evil, then how would a virtuous person act? Is that fair to ask that? How would they act? Janie, what does that say in that passage?
5:24 is the
22.
22. Abstain from every form of evil.
Okay, that's a pretty simple statement, right? Would it be fair to say that this virtuous person abstains from evil?
Yeah, they have high moral standards.
High moral standards. Anything else? Now I'm going to lay it on you so you can help us fellas who are kind of weak between the ears sometimes. Is that not true? I mean, you've been talking about it on Tuesdays, so. So what is this strong moral character you're talking about? How is that seen?
What do you mean, like, what does it look like?
Yeah.
Well, you abstain from those worldly things that cause you to sin.
Right? Well, so,
It's possible.
okay, but yeah, I understand that, but there's something else about this person, right? I mean, it's demonstrated,
God first.
yeah, when they walk, right? When they're out in the world, when they're talking with a sister in Christ or a brother in Christ. I think that's also what you're talking about there when you look at the high moral standard. So, anybody else?
She's loyal,
It's what?
loyalty,
Loyalty? So what does loyalty mean?
that she's focused on her husband or her family, and that's where her efforts are put,
Would there be anybody above that, though?
other than God.
Other than God, that's all, right? So she's focused on God, as, you know, we're talking about, but she's loyal to her husband. Can that be difficult?
Yes.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't be that, right? But it can be difficult, can it? And vice versa. So, who said Richard? John?
Being excellent is more than not being sinful.
Oh, I understand.
And that's, you know, if you draw the bar and say, well, I'm not sinful, well, that's fine, but what positive characteristics are you exuding in that? And the idea of excellence is that she demonstrates these positive characteristics. What do you look for, in a servant Christ? Well, we should be agape driven.
Okay. Yeah.
We should be in service. We should be, focusing our time on things that bring benefit to other people.
Okay.
That's an excellent character.
Okay.
So I would say that, when he's talking about that there, that's who he's describing.
All right. Anybody else?
Which is why verses 11 through 31 answer your question.
Okay, we're going to make it home at 7:28. 11 through 20, those are amazing verses, don't you think, Karen? I mean, that describes all of that, and we're going to get into that.
So it's like Tom says, it's not just.
Right, that's why,
It's all of these things.
yeah, that's why I asked, how's it seen? How to, and that's what you were saying, is how this is demonstrated, right? Yes.
Another thing that might be helpful here too is look at the opposite of it. One word, Jezebel.
What?
Jezebel.
Oh.
Very opposite of this
Yeah.
kind of character. Have you guys talked about that yet on TV? Athaliah is what that's daughter of Jezebel. Yeah.
Can we be part of the discussion over here, or is it just between you two? And that's true. I don't know. I was Jezebel. Wasn't she sweet or something? Or I think not, huh?
Would you sleep with both eyes closed in her presence?
Oh no,
Somebody.
no, right. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, I always looked at this is not a list of jobs that the wife does, that this is her work. This is to highlight to the husband what makes these things that she does so worthy of him, that he should really appreciate it for that. It's not because she just fixes him dinner and stuff like that and takes it for granted. She's portraying a lot of things here that are way above the mundane.
Okay. So maybe there's. She says it's not a work; it's who she is, basically, or.
It's not just jobs.
Right.
It's not your duty.
So that might be like when I was a young fella getting into preaching, the older guys used to tell me, preaching is not a vocation or a job. It's an advocate, it's your life. And so what you're saying, this is this woman's life. And that's what you see in this woman's life, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, we got Isaac.
So, I'm not certain whether or not all of chapter 31 is written by King Lemuel.
Is done what?
Whether or not all 31 is by King Lemuel.
I didn't even mention his name, but that's okay.
But I think it is intentional that this comes immediately after. There's a warning in verse 3. Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. And there's a warning there about the promiscuity that will be very common for kings to take advantage of, and to not do that. But he's not telling his son, women are bad.
Right.
And he is contrasting that later with the virtuous woman. This is the sort of woman that will build you up, rather than the woman that will destroy you and destroy your kingdom.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else? So we got a few things that you can think about on that verse, right, or on this passage. And I'll be honest with you, Isaac, never thought of starting there. It would have been a good place to start. perhaps, that demonstration. So let's look at, we might ask, I better find out where we're at here in this thing here. Or I've got a habit of just going on with things. What would be the opposite? We got that. Verse 2, we talked about that. Now go to Genesis 2:20, and the question I've asked there is, why is a good wife of such great value? Genesis 2:20. If somebody gets there, would you raise your hand and so it can be read? You can read it, please. You know the passage. You'll know it as soon as you see it. Who will read that for me? Okay, go ahead, Gordon.
So Adam gave name to all cattle, to the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper comparable to him.
So when you look at 2:20 there, and I asked the question, why is a good wife of such great value? What did Adam need? The animals had mates, right? Adam needed someone to do what? Be with him. You think he would have been pretty lonely in the garden all by himself? We don't know how long they were in the garden, do we? But you think he'd have been pretty lonely? Interesting thing, did he court Eve? Did he court her? Ever buy her flowers? Take her to move, anything like that? God said, this is your what? So I picture, and I've probably preached on it before, I can see Adam's, he wakes up, he stretches, he wonders what went on here and everything, and he looks off into this beautiful, lush greenery, and he sees this woman coming out of the green, out of that, and that's what God gave him. That's how I see it, okay? She could have been boom right there or whatever, but she was brought to him. And I'm not chauvinistic. Yes, I am, but woman was created to stand beside who? Man. But there's something about that man that we're going to discuss that he needs to be. But this is I think it was John I was talking to. He said this is a contract between two people, really, isn't it, John, to go through life. And so Eve is going to go through life with Adam. And that's what we're talking about here. This woman is prepared to be the woman that can go through life, share with this man, and she demonstrates the qualities that make him look good. It says that down here. She makes him look good. And don't you enjoy it when you're out with your wife and you can stand there together and you may be as handsome as Bob there, but I'm sure he's glad his wife's standing beside him when he's out because it makes him look good, Linda. So you don't think so, huh? But well,
It would take a lot more than standing beside me.
All right. So let's go on. Karen brought these up, and we're just going to go down through them, and I just want you to remark on them. I'll read them very quickly. Look at verse 11. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So that basically says the husband has he's full of what in her? Got it? Huh? Trust, confidence. There's no doubt about it. He doesn't doubt her. And he has full confidence in her. And I wish sometimes younger married couples could really understand the importance of that. That they need to have, a man needs to have confidence in his wife. And if he can't have confidence in her, he shouldn't do what? Marry her. But he's confident in her. Look at verse 12. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. What's that talking about, ladies?
Doesn't tear him down, doesn't talk poorly about her to her friends.
Okay.
Or him. Yeah.
And neither should men do that, right? On the opposite thing. But I just put up there, because of her, is life easier? It should be, shouldn't it? I mean, because she's standing beside him, she's helping him walk through life. He's not walking through alone. And often good marriages, there's extended life in many good marriages, and it's more meaningful and more fruitful because of this woman in his life that he has full confidence in. Does that make sense? You know, and this is what she does for his life. And a lot of guys are saying, well, she's not out digging ditches with me, or she's not out doing this or that. If she's standing beside you and she's a godly woman, she does all these things for you. And what we need to learn to do, and as far as our spouses are concerned, is we need to learn to appreciate that. You know. Anything else you ladies want to add there? Because I don't. Verse 13, look at it. This is interesting. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. So it doesn't mean you have to be on the making wool and stuff, you know, or materials, but it's the idea that she's kind of creative and she's productive. Our women generally are pretty creative on things, aren't they? And productive and about doing things and so forth. And we'll learn more about that as we go on down through here. So what are some of the things that if this woman that I'm married to, or you fellows are married to, what are some things that we as husbands can do to encourage such a woman?
Tell her that.
You're not a guy. You saved all the guys, didn't you? Okay. Tell her that. What else?
You can help her. You can support her.
Support her? Somebody else said something?
Help her.
Help her? The hardest thing I have to do sometimes is perhaps the easiest. Listen. Communicate. I mean, this woman, I've got confidence in my wife. She makes my life easier and more meaningful, and my wife does, as I'm sure yours does, more fruitful. She's creative. She gets a little crazy sometimes when she's trying to create things, but she's creative and she's productive and all that. And so when you think about this gift that is in your life, and I believe your wife, gentlemen, is a gift from God. That's what I believe. And we ought to see these things in her. And it's true, I guess, Karen, as you brought this up, there's no perfect woman. Oh, no, I shouldn't have said it that way. But you know what I mean. Your wife may not have all these qualities, but most women have. When you look at these things, most of our sisters that stand beside us in marriage have these things in their lives. Look at verse 14. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. The idea there is, you know, she kind of extends herself for resources. I mean, what? What'd you say, Gene?
I said she goes through the carry-out frequently.
Isaac, do you have anything that's really influential to say on this? Because we're getting nothing up here. And he's single. Okay, look at verse 15. She rises, I love this verse. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her husband and portions of her to her maidens. In other words, she's up before what? For what? Before dawn. I mean, really. I mean, I can remember, you know, when I was on the farm with my grandmother, they were always up, you know, and getting things started and so forth. And this may sound silly to y'all now, but when I was first married and I got out of the Marine Corps and I was working in Dayton, my wife was up, packed my lunch every morning, fixed me breakfast, you know, and she got me off to work. That's kind of not a thing today, right? But, you know, and she was a stay-at-home wife and she worked in the house and so forth, but she took care of me and took care of our kids just like you've done. But she never went to bed after I did in those days, you know. So, but this woman was, who she goes on to, she's totally involved in her family. Everything she does, yes.
Well, it says portions to her tendon, so she was generous.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Took care of those that worked for her, yes.
How many people bring food, and wife's food,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's ill? Those are the things, those qualities that we probably look at today.
Yes. Anybody else? All right, look at the next verse. Verse 16. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. In other words, is she productive in things? Does she invest in things? This woman buys a vineyard, right? Or buys a field. She plants the field and so forth. I don't know where you can go with that, but you ladies can talk about that. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Verse 17. So, I had a hard time with this. Maybe y'all don't. What do you think this verse is talking about, ladies?
Hard worker.
Huh?
She's a hard worker.
Okay, a hard worker, all right.
She's strong physically and mentally. She's intelligent. She has a head for business.
Okay.
She doesn't take care of it.
Yeah, it must be really hard for you. I mean, but, you know, with him, but I would say, can't sit there, yeah, okay. I found, and I kind of looked for some help on this, some say she keeps herself physically fit, strong, and healthy. I don't know, ladies, how that fits into the way you've looked at this, but that's just what some say, all right? Look at verse 18. Let's go on down through here real quick. She senses that her gain is good, could be precious. Her lamp does not go out at night. She perceives she is productive and sacrifices to manage the home. I know that's a kind of a thing, but is that kind of what it's talking about, ladies? I mean, you're, huh?
She's always on the job.
She's always on the job,
We
right?
talk about that a lot. We're mothers and wives 24/7.
Yeah.
Where
Oh,
does the kid go to in the middle of the night? That's like excited all the time.
okay. Brian, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. So, you don't care. So, all right.
She plans ahead.
She plans ahead.
Doesn't squander.
Huh?
She doesn't squander the money that her husband has.
Okay, doesn't squander.
You know, she's frugal.
So there's more to a marriage than just the good times, as far as all that we all have. There's a lot more to marriage sometimes than what we think. It has to do with our characters, right? And how our character is used in our marriage. So, yes, you raised two hands. You've got to say something. Okay. Look at verse 19. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. Isn't that kind of what we've been talking about? It's the idea that she does tedious work of spinning and weaving. Wouldn't they have done that back in this time? I can remember, you don't think it's silly, I can remember my mom made our shirts and she even made our underwear, and she'd make our pants sometimes for us. And you used to talk about making them out of flour sacks. They had some pretty I had shirts made out of flour sacks. I don't feel bad about that at all. But mom was working, and then coming home, we'd go to bed at night, and you could hear the sewing machine running, and she was very tedious at the things she did, and got up and got us off to school, and she did the things she needed to do to help us have a good day or something to come home to. So I think when you look at this woman, and I've watched women over the years that really are involved in taking care of their family, taking care of the things that need to be done. And I think that's something that we as men need to honor, and we need to respect. Quickly, we'll move here. It's time already. Okay, let's just finish reading this. She extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hand to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. In other words, she takes care, her family doesn't have to worry about the seasons, right? She takes care of that. She takes care of those that are in need around her. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. In other words, she dresses nicely. She takes care of herself, right? Her husband is known in the gates when he sits down among the elders of the land. Why? Why is her husband known in the gates?
Because her wife is known in the community.
Because of his wife, right? Somebody said something over here. I thought I heard. So would you ladies agree with that that your character, the life you lived, can be an influence for your husband in the body of Christ, in the workplace or whatever. You know, and so being a wife, I don't see as something that you're dragged along and all that. A woman is very important in a man's life. And celibacy, I know that has to do with sexual things, but other things are in marriage besides just sex. Matter of fact, we need to get married to a woman because she kind of looks like this, right? I mean, she's living for God and she's focused on God. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles all at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her. And I wish we could teach that I wish children were in here. We could talk to them a little bit about that. They need to do what for their mother? They need to bless her. What does it mean that children bless their mother? Huh? Honor? Obey her, respect her, lift her up, honor. Because of all the things that mom does for them in the home. Her husband also, and he praises her, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beautiful and is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the products of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. And I know if you guys sat down and wrote your wives a love letter, you do that every now and then, right? So you write her a love letter, and you list some of these things here you think she was that she has in her life. You'd kind of say that's kind of silly to do. Maybe it's not silly, recognizing what the gift is, gentlemen, that God has given us. Because for me, as a man, that gift is my wife that God's given me. That's a gift. And you handle a gift properly. You recognize the value of the gift. And, you know, we may joke around and stuff like that, but guys, we need to respect our wives. We can look at this list and say, boy, they've really got a lot going there. But you need to think about the guy that has this kind of a woman in his life, a Christian woman in his life that's living for God. You need to realize how valuable that is. And it's not something to be thrown aside. And as we'll talk on down the road, most of the problem in marriages is not recognizing the value of the wife and of each other in a marriage. And most of the time is men do not love their wives like Christ loved the church a lot of times. And don't even love her as much as you should love a friend because of your neighbor, because you're to love your neighbor as you love who? And your wife would be your closest neighbor, right? So we need to think about these things and pull them together. Any comments before we leave? Close out. Yes, Art.
A number of times domestically, but I think a good example of the Bible would be a co-ed seller. Not we were talking about the work of the Lord outside the home.
Could some of you closer repeat that for me? I couldn't hear it.
A co-ed seller.
What? Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. Oh, they were very important. They did everything together, didn't they? Taught and everything. Thank you, Art. Gary.
I think when we're talking about having a woman, a godly woman that's beside you, and helps a man to stay upright. Just in my time in the church, things I've noticed, I see far more women bringing their kids to church without a husband, and the husband's at home.
Right.
I would venture to say that women are stronger in faith in general. So there's something to be said about that. Yeah. I just wanted to recognize myself.
I think it's a good point to bring up. Women are stronger in many ways, maybe not physically stronger, but I mean in many, many ways.
But I do have one question.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, a couple things.
Bedtime's 9 minutes away.
2 things kind of funny.
Okay.
You skipped over verse 11 where it says that men should have a sugar roll. That's number 1. That's number 11. You skipped over 11. And then what's left for the man after the woman does it?
I hope this roof doesn't open up. I mean, I really do. What was the second thing?
What's left for the man to do after the woman does all these things?
Grovel.
The trash.
Randy, would you close us out in prayer, please?
Lord, Father, we thank you for all the blessings you touched on. Thank you for this opportunity to come together and study and pray to be with us and
Amen. Thanks, Randy. Y'all have a good evening.